My name is Brian Ayler. I'm going to be leading the trip that High Tide Scuba has to Beaver Lake, July 19th and 20th. So Beaver Lake is about 6.5 hours away from the dive shop. So depending on which time of day you leave, and we will be departing on a Friday, we are going to leave about noon or 1 o'clock. But keep in mind, on Friday, you have some fairly significant traffic if you get too late into the afternoon. First 60 to 100 miles of your trip are going to involve significant traffic leaving DFW for the weekend. So the earlier you can leave, the better. They're right about 7 p.m. And then after we get checked into the hotel and everything, usually we go out and do a little grocery shopping and pick up a little bit of a snack and get rested up to go the next day diving. We're going to be on site up there from 8 a.m. until about 8 p.m. on Saturday and about 8 a.m. until noon on Sunday. We will likely have a published schedule that we put together depending on the number of classes. But if you want to get space for dive site number one, it is incredibly busy because that's where they teach open water. And all of the shops in Oklahoma and Arkansas teach in that dive site number one. The gate opens exactly at 8 a.m. There will be a line starting at that gate that will probably start building up there a little bit before 7 a.m. So, depending on whether or not you'd like to park along the area where dive site number one is, or you would like to take a longer walk from the alternate parking spot, you're going to need to be there probably 7 to 8 o'clock to get in line to get in the gate and pay so that you can get a space right there along the road. If you're going to Tim's Reef, there's limited parking there, but it's a little more flexible at what time of day you can go over there and do your diving. So I would say for dive site number two, you can arrive pretty much any time of day. And then for dive site number one, keep in mind that closes at dusk. So if you show up over there at 6 p.m. and go diving one dive, you are pretty much going to be at dusk and you're going to have to leave the park fairly quickly. So the earlier you get there, the more diving you get in and the better the space you get. So there is no real morning or afternoon period for diving. There's no schedule of that type. If you do have a class that has a surface interval or something of that nature, you may have an afternoon dive time and that will be posted and listed accordingly. But it is kind of like an all day come and go for that dive. If we're going to do night and limited visibility dives, there are two dives in that. We will most likely do the first dive starting around 6 p.m. And then we will do our second dive, depending on how long the first dive is. We will start our second dive probably sometime, I would say maybe 7:30, right as it's starting to get dusk and starting to get dark, we would start that dive to open, and we are going to get our diving in from 8 until about 11 or 12. I know the instructors are planning on heading out probably just a little before noon from there, just so they can get back and return to their normal jobs on Monday. I know there's been several questions about are we eating dinner? I do not miss many meals, so yes, we are eating dinner. We are going to try to eat dinner as a group, and we are going to try to arrange something. This is a tourist area, so it is going to be feast or famine up there when we go. Part of the difficulty is because it is a resort area, there could be literally a 2 hour line to go get a simple dinner at a roadside restaurant up there, or it may be that the majority of the tables are empty and we can get a group in there. Most of the time, we'll end up in outdoor seating or out on a patio, and we do end up at separate tables. They don't generally give us one big table together. We will be staying over at the Beaver Dam Dive Shop, Restaurant, and Campground. There is a limited number of hotel and hostel style rooms that are over there. I don't know currently what their availability is. I know all the instructors have booked a room there and are staying there. You can camp there, or you can stay in a hotel, or you can stay in a hostel, or you can stay in any one of probably 25 hotels that are in the area of that lake where you can have a very nice room. So you're not required to stay where we are staying, but we will be staying at Beaver Dam Dive Shop accommodations while we are there. So they are basic accommodations. So it is not the five-star Four Seasons hotel. It is a standard hotel motel quality, something you would find alongside the road somewhere. It is safe. It's fairly nice. It has facilities for having cookouts and other things. So here is the local restaurant fare. The closest restaurants that are a sit-down style restaurant is actually Angler's Restaurant, and that is a seafood restaurant. They also have burgers. I believe they have pizza there and a few other things. There is a bar there. I don't believe it's a full bar. I believe it is a beer and wine bar, not an actual full bar. If you go into town, there are a number of places in Eureka Springs as you travel in on the main Highway 62. There is everything from barbecue to sit-down French restaurants to home cooked meals. There is everything you could possibly imagine for restaurant selections that are there. As you can see here on Facebook, I am on the Divers Weekend Out on Beaver Lake. If you click on the About tab, you can get all of the basic information about this event, how long it is, approximately where it is, etc. The tab you want, though, is the Discussion tab. This is where you can ask your questions and you can look at information that is posted by both the shop and by others. So, for instance, I put this post together the other day just to kind of let everybody know what the proximity is of the locations we will be at while we're at Beaver Lake. There will be more posted here as we go on and as we get closer to the event. But if you have a question or have something you want to ask, feel free to come to this discussion area and post your question, and we will answer it from the shop account and get you your answer. This first map here is an overview showing you from the lower right-hand corner where it says Beaver Dam Motel. That is the Beaver Dam Dive Shop. This is about a 3-mile drive on Highway 187 to go up to the far north end of the lake, where we are going to turn left onto the Corps of Engineers roads, and we're actually going to go look at the two Corps of Engineers areas that are on the north side of the lake. And you'll notice there's that big purple X. That is going to be our dive site number one. If we look at this zoomed in to the Corps of Engineers area, you'll notice there's a dive site number two and a dive site number one. And then there's an area that says gate and an area that says pay. The area off of Dam Site Road, where you go into the loop for the day park area, that is actually a gated area. That gate opens up at 8 a.m. in the morning. There is a pay station just beyond that gate where you have to pay for the people in your vehicle to enter the park. I believe the fees are $5 per vehicle for the day. And that is a maximum of 4 people in a vehicle. So if you do have more than 4 people, please appropriately pay the fees as they're listed on the sign. But you will pay at the pay gate, and then you'll advance down that loop road that follows along the shoreline to get down towards dive site number one. If you've gone to the boat ramp, you have gone too far. All of our diving is going to occur between the pay area and the boat ramp that's listed on this map for dive site number one. Our other option for diving is dive site number two. For dive site number two, you also have to pay to go into that area. However, it's not gated. There is a credit card machine there, a device to produce a ticket for your car. It is the same Corps of Engineers entry fee of $5 per vehicle. You can simply pull into area number two, park in the parking area that's there, pay your $5, and put your receipt on the dash and dive from that Tim's Reef area. If you are coming over into the day park area, you'll notice that the beach looks very narrow. It's not because there is a very narrow strip of sand, it's because that beach is much steeper. That is a very rocky surface, and you will have to climb down from the road down to the water. And the best way to do this is to either bring a pair of old tennis shoes or a pair of hiking boots and to be able to walk your gear down onto the rocks, set everything up on the rocks that you want to use for going diving, and then change into your dive gear right there on the shore and start your dive. So if you are a newer diver, you are probably going to want to dive from dive site number two, which is a shallower, flatter bottom. It's a little bit easier to get to. If you are an advanced open water diver or someone that's been an open water diver for a few months, you may want to go out and check out dive site number one. Dive site number one does have depths down to 200 feet. Shows that there is a wall close to the west side of dive site number one. Can we dive there? And the answer is absolutely yes, you can. That depth drops off very quickly along that boat ramp area and along that west side of dive site number one. So govern yourself accordingly with the depth, and please make sure you have the proper training and the abilities to dive in that depth of water. That water actually goes down to 204 feet of depth in that area. Keep in mind the recreational limit for recreational scuba diving is 130 feet, and you should never dive beyond your training capacity, beyond your equipment capacity, beyond your skills, or beyond your certification. So you'll be required to govern yourself accordingly, and you'll dive at whatever level you are trained to in that area. But that area is a little bit steeper when it comes to the depths that are in that area. And as you can see on this map, you can see dive site number one. The lines are really close together, and very quickly it drops off to 140 or 150 feet of depth. Whereas if you're up in dive site number two, you'll notice you have to go fairly far out in the water. You can go out about 500 or 600 feet, and the maximum depth that it gets to at that point is about 65 feet. So as I said, beginning divers and newer divers, dive site number two. More advanced divers, dive site number one. This map, by the way, is available from the Corps of Engineers, and it just happens to be the depth map for the lake. The purple line on here is the recreational limit for diving. That is the 130 feet of depth line. You'll notice on the left side of the map how close that is to the shore. So be very careful if you go to dive site number one to pay attention to the depths that you have below you. Because there is active boat traffic on this lake, that we will have a dive float. That dive float will likely have a dive flag on top of it, marking that we are scuba diving in that area. And boat traffic will be cautious of that, but you as the diver also need to pay attention that as you're surfacing, you need to make sure there is no boat traffic above you so that you're not either surfacing into the bottom of someone's boat or right beside someone's boat or into a lane of traffic for the boat. You are going to want to consider probably a 3 mil or 5 mil suit if you're wearing a wetsuit, or wear a dry suit. The water is about 80 degrees on the top surface, but as you start to descend, the minute you get to about 20 feet, the water temperature drops down to the high 60s. And as you continue down past about 50 feet, the water starts to get into the high 50s all the way down to about 100 feet of depth. So depending on your comfort level and what you like to wear, you consider accordingly which equipment or what equipment that you would like to wear, either a 3 mil, a 5 mil, a 7 mil, or a dry suit. If you're diving at dive site number one, I would bring along a pair of shoes or a pair of hiking boots. Again, to be able to stage your gear a little bit closer to the water, and then change into your soft boots for diving. That way you're not walking up and over across gravel and rocks that will be a little bit painful to your feet. I would recommend an SMB and actually a DSMB. So an SMB is used for the surface, but a DSMB you can launch from depth. When you're on your safety stop, if you have a DSMB that has a reel or a spool, you can launch your DSMB and that will pop up onto the surface, and that gives boat traffic an idea that there is a diver that will be surfacing there soon. And also it is a good safety measure for yourself. One, it lets all the other divers around you know where you are surfacing at. Two, it warrants boat traffic. And three, it gives you a buoyant object on the surface that you can return to. You may even want to use your flashlight during the day if you are diving at depth, because as we know, as you go down further in the water below 60 feet, it starts to get darker because the water cannot penetrate that much, or the light cannot penetrate that much water, and it is not as bright at 60 feet as it is, say, on the surface. High Tide Scuba has a special equipment rental package for just this dive going to Beaver Dam. And it is a $120 equipment package. It is that covers all of your rental, which is head to toe gear, two tanks, and all the weights that you need for your dive at Beaver Lake. We can do night diving. We need to do all night diving from dive site number 2. So if you're doing night and limited visibility diving, that will be from dive site number 2. Dive site number 1 in the gated area, the gates open at 8 a.m. and they close at dusk. And the Corps of Engineers is very strict on that. If you are parked in there and they close the gates, you will be getting your vehicle out in the morning at 8 o'clock when they reopen the gates. They close that park down, and that is a closed camp area, so there is no in and out traffic after dusk. So we will have to do all night and limited visibility diving from Tim's Reef over at dive site number 2. So if you're going to participate in the night dive and just come out and dive with us at night, you will want to have some kind of tank marker light or one of those little saline markers that is very helpful for you and your buddy to be able to see each other. You will also want to have some sort of flashlight or underwater light that you can use so that you are able to see what's underwater at night. So for that perspective, you're going to want to bring your flashlights. You're going to want to have good batteries. We'll have the Deep Diving course by SSI, where you will learn the skills you need to dive deep to a depth of 100 feet. And you'll learn all the skills and the requirements for deep diving. We will also be holding a recreational deco course that will teach you the basics of decompression science and what you need to do if you're a recreational diver and you exceed your no decompression limits on a dive and how to safely do that. And then we will have night and limited visibility available as a dive package. And then also altitude diving is an education class that you can take because we will be diving at a site that is above 1,000 feet of elevation. You actually can do the altitude dives there. There are no dives required for the altitude diving class because it is a knowledge specialty, but it's good to have some practical application for the altitude class when you take the altitude class because it helps you to better understand the materials. If you call the shop, you can get pretty much any class you want scheduled as long as we have an instructor available. And yes, we will bring along a copy of the shop code to verify your dives. The best way to verify your dives, though, is to take your SSI app that you and your buddy have, and you can actually verify your dives with each other. If you are taking a class, remember you have to have your dive verified by the instructor teaching the class so that all of the records can be tied together for your instructor doing the dives the same time you are. Thank you everybody for watching our video and attending our call and also coming to our event with us and sharing time with High Tide Scuba at Beaver Lake.